Everyone mute, please.
Hello, and welcome to Corporate Empower's first webinar. This webinar will focus on managing mental health during application season and your studies. It is so great to see so many of you on the stream, and we look forward to providing you with valuable insights that you can use at university or in the workplace. So a little bit about me. My name is Sarah, and I am the lead blog writer for Corporate Empowered. I am also a Leeds Uni Law with French Law graduate and an inspiring solicitor. I have written a few blogs now on mental health, covering topics such as the pandemic, rejection, and Suicide Awareness Day. You can check these out on our website, and I look forward to contributing to the blog with more pertinent topics. I'll begin by giving some insight into what we do and our aims. Next slide, please. As current or recent university students ourselves pursuing our way into the corporate sector, we recognise the stigma surrounded around mental health. We address these issues through blog posts and our dedicated anonymous forum where topics can be posted and discussed in the aim of seeking advice from other anonymous users. We hope to build a community of all ages and backgrounds and shine a light on challenges such as mental health issues, discrimination, and many more. This will be the first of our many webinars and interactive sessions to come in the future, and we hope that you can support our cause. I will now move on to the structure of the event. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Firstly, you'll be hearing from our members, Laura Smith and Makara Struff, who will discuss managing time well and managing difficult situations respectively. Then we will allow our guest speakers, Rebecca, Matthew, Suzanne, Angela, and Eloise, to discuss their experiences, followed by Q&A. Without further ado, I should pass on to Laura, who will be giving the first talk.
Thank you for that, Sarah. Thank you for the introduction. Also, I'd like to just extend a nice welcome to all of our guest speakers. Thank you very much for being here today, in taking time out of your busy schedule, busy weekend even, and our co-founders who are currently sorting out interesting issues behind the scenes. So thank you very much, Grace and Oscar, for your continued help. So, by way of introduction, I'm Laura, and I am the forum manager here at Corporate Empowered, and I am a final year German and history student at the University of Southampton. So I am the non-law portion of this team, an enthusiastic photographer, and obviously aspiring solicitor. And today I'll be focusing on how to manage your time better to reduce stress and in turn maybe help your mental health a little bit. So I'd like to just briefly focus on that quote there on the left-hand side, the struggle is only ever temporary. And that's just a self-reminder, actually, that every struggle you go through, whether this is in work life or personal life, it's usually only ever temporary. This will subsist on that note. Oscar, next slide, please. So the first portion of my short presentation will be about my own personal experience, and I'll be focusing on two personal examples. So while I was working during studying, and also during my year abroad last year. So first of all, I did work part-time during university first and second year, so I'm now in my fourth year, and this was interesting in terms of managing my time because I had to learn how to say no to particular situations. For example, if I had a very busy shift, I worked in Wetherspoons, the day on a weekend, I had to learn how to say social events that would up a lot of my time and my energy, and therefore I wouldn't be in tip-top condition to go to work the next day. So that was interesting to deal with that, especially in first year when you really want to say yes to everything. But it would mean that my productivity would struggle during the week if I was tired. So I needed to say no. That was very important. And second of all, as Mikhail will be talking about after me, it is important that you do take a mental health mindset reset. So when you're doing so much during the week, so I was studying and then when I was working, it's very important to just say no to internal reset. and you can recharge. So that's the first one. And second of all, how I managed to accomplish my goals during my year abroad. I'm going to be honest with all of you. It wasn't a great year. I had a lot of personal struggles to do with mental health, particularly not feeling good enough, not feeling confident. And in the meantime, I had to write a dissertation, which also wasn't, which I ended up getting a high 214. So I'm very proud of that. But how I accomplished this was so I decided to start early. I started it early so I could do it in pieces rather than doing it all together and rushing. So that worked. But also I had to do lesson plans as well because I was a teaching assistant. So I just did small portions, and that really helped me. And it was a way of building resilience, which I feel like I've got quite good at now, having been through that year. So in turn, how I manage this in regards to my mental health is definitely build a support network, have people you can go to from different categories of your life, whether personal or professional, and have them there to support you. That's the number one thing. And second of all, if there's any creative people around, bullet journaling, give that a go. Look it up on Pinterest. It is a very therapeutic way of relieving stress. So on that note, I'll be going on to my advice. Thanks, Oscar. Next slide. So number one, well, one and only piece of advice really, have an electronic calendar, download Google Calendar. It is the best thing that happened to me this summer. And you can download, so when you get given an event invitation, you can download the calendar proportioned straight to your phone or to your laptop, and it really helps. And if you're a creative person, or if you're a visual learner, you need the colors, you can have a color scheme. Second of all, as I said, learn to say no if you're taking on too much. Makar will also talk about that in his portion of the presentation. You need to recognize that you can't do everything, whether work, so a professional life, or personal life. Number three, don't leave important things to the last minute. Like I said with my dissertation, I started early and I got the results from that. It's a lot easier to deal with. So I always split my word count as well. So I thought, right, I'm going to write 300 words about this, and that's it. And then that builds up. So then you end up becoming a lot more productive, not putting as much time of that piece of work into your day, especially if you're not feeling mentally great. So yes, plan early, research this, and take your time, prioritize. And finally, find out what kind of learner you are. You can literally type this into Google. Some people, like visual learners, for example, they need colors in order to remember stuff. And this will really help them. Now, particularly if you've just started out at university, this will be really useful to you. So yeah, just to conclude, that quote on the right is very important. Make your mental health a priority. It's very important to recharge, reset your batteries, and think about these things, and hopefully this will make the coming year and application season for a lot of you aspiring solicitors a little bit better. So on that note, thank you, and we'll be on to Makar.
And thank you everyone for joining us today. I do hope you're enjoying the webinar so far. By way of introduction, my name is Makar Rajkov. I'm currently studying law and French law at UCL. And today I'll be talking to you about how to manage difficult situations. Now, this might seem like a very broad topic, but since the webinar today is about situations in the new academic year, which for many will be virtual, I thought I'd talk about some situations which are relevant to an online setting, I suppose. Next slide, please. Thanks, Oscar. Right, so for today, I've chosen two different situations which come from my personal experience this summer. And these are online event oversubscription and social event pressure. So the first one, let me explain a little bit about what online event oversubscription could entail. Now, we're all very keen to get into the corporate world. I hope those of you who are listening. And many organizations will indeed take this kind of attitude of proactivity, and they'll take advantage of it. They'll offer online events over the coming months and encourage all sorts of keen students to sign up, which can lead to, as I mentioned, oversubscription of events. Now, why is this a difficult situation, as I've labeled it? Well, it's something that I actually experienced personally towards the beginning of the summer holidays, where I made a to-do list with upcoming webinars and online courses and useful videos to watch. Essentially, put together my list for what I thought was going to be a productive summer. And I know that this is definitely going to be relevant going forward, where you all kind of sign up to the career fairs that are just starting to open up for signups now, and all sorts of application workshops. And once you sign up to this, all of these kind of opportunities, they can become a burden, where you essentially have weeks planned in advance, stuffing your calendar full of the odd event here and there, and you feel somewhat tied down. Now, it's important in these situations to take a step back and realize that you may not want to plan some events far in advance, because you might find better opportunities that open themselves up to you, that present themselves along the way. Now, when, say, you're in a productive mood, then all of these online events can seem like the way to go, as if you're learning something new, you're kind of improving on a particular skill. But you have to not forget that there are moments where you will inevitably feel down, or perhaps feel overwhelmed by other time commitments. Let's say university, other kind of education, or maybe a part-time job. And it is at these moments where the online events that you sign up for, they weigh you down, and they weigh down on specifically your mental well-being, because you realize you're not learning anything new, and your mind is just crowded full of kind of restless thoughts. Now, especially in this kind of era of everything going online, it is very important to prioritize your time commitments well. And as Laura mentioned earlier, learn to say no to yourself whenever you're itching to click on another sign up button, if you realize that you're doing a bit too much. Right. Now, on to my second topic of choice, which is social event peer pressure. A bit of background on this as well is that it's often the case that during an academic year, people are either focused on solely working or socializing, with nothing much in between, or quite an unhealthy mixture of the two, I suppose. Now, everyone has a different balance of these two activities, but many, I feel, kind of feel as though they're subconsciously peer pressured into focusing on one of these two areas more by those who are at a certain extreme. So let's say a friend who, for example, goes and socializes every night, or a friend who sits in their room and works until the morning, and you feel like you need to be more like one of those people, essentially kind of pressuring yourself into an uncomfortable situation. Now, I thought this could be especially relevant with COVID, kind of social measures and restrictions slowly easing. It's inevitable that we're all going to want to see our friends and go to social events, and there will come a point where you actively keep on perhaps wanting to be social, but realize that there's work to be done to catch up with, or perhaps the other way around, where you're burdened with countless applications and you feel as though you really should be spending some more time outside. But in either case, the important part is that you feel as though you don't get the best of both worlds. You feel unsatisfied with how you balance these two activities. Now, my advice to you in these situations, which are, as I mentioned, inevitable, is to learn to take either a full day off or half day off, doing something relaxing, such as perhaps You could go for a walk or read a book or do some meditation. Everyone has their own kind of way of coping with this, but the important part is that it's away from screens, and that it's preferably something other than sleep, so that you can actively recognize that you're trying to be relaxed and kind of wind down. Now, having an activity like this acts as a hard reset, and at that point, after you've reset mentally, you can often start afresh with a clear mind and prioritize along the way. Next slide, please. Thanks. Now, on to my advice. So this first one is quite heavily linked with my point of not signing up to every kind of opportunity you see. Now, it says be on the lookout for new opportunities, but don't always commit. What I mean by this is that once you've accepted that you won't sign up to every single event, you then have the ability to consider every opportunity that you come across seriously, because you have the possibility to invest time in it. Therefore, you can compare these opportunities with each other. You can compare them with clashing events to determine which one would bring you personally the most benefit. Now, I've listed a few kind of top websites or favorites of mine that I use to be on the lookout for opportunities. LinkedIn, I'm sure you all know, it has some fantastic resources that people provide on there. Sometimes you can even get into an internship if you fill out the applications on there. But the second one is GradVisor. This is an excellent website which you can sign up for a mailing list, and you always get notified of new summer internships, grad roles that become available, kind of so that you're up to speed on what you can actually apply for. And the last one is AngelList. This is quite a niche one. It's full of startups that you can sign up for. You can gain virtual internships on there, and it's a great one to have a look at. As you know, I think that these startups offer quite a lot of skilled, kind of valuable skill experience. You'll be working in small teams and kind of getting to know a bit about interesting industries. So do have a look on that. So the second point is, if you haven't already, take up a hobby away from screens, something that you can turn to for comfort when times are tough. So kind of another way of looking at this is that you need to have some constant in your timetable, with kind of, nonstop different lectures that you're going to be going to and different assignments. You're always going to be shifting your focus. But if there's something that you can always come back to and rely on, a sport or a hobby, it's a much needed reset mechanism. And thirdly, lastly, is I would say, keep going. I know kind of there will inevitably be difficult situations in the upcoming year, but if you prioritize your tasks well, if you keep on focusing on self-development and perhaps also adopt a long-term goal of improving a particular skill that's needed for your industry of choice, then you will end up getting those experiences that really make you stand out among other fellow applicants. As you can see here, I was rejected from all my internships last year because I really didn't know what I was doing. And then after kind of, sitting down and gaining some valuable experience, I was able to secure internships at quite a few companies that are on there. So, yeah. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed listening to that. That's all for me. I'll hand over to Sarah to introduce our next guest. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren McCarr, for really talking about important ways to handle difficult situations. Now I'm going to pass on to Rebecca Daramola, who will be talking about her experiences. So over to you, Rebecca.
Okay, sorry, I'm now not on mute. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I graduated last year with a biochemistry degree, and I actually started applying to law firms whilst in my final year because I discovered law quite late. And it was a very difficult time for me because I had all these exams whilst applying to law firms, and I felt a lot of pressure. And the biggest advice that I can give is that it's okay not to be perfect. So I got 3 rejections in 2 days. And I applied for CC, did the Watson Glaser, got 20%. And when you go on LinkedIn, everyone's posting about like their first class and getting, so many training contracts and all of that. And it's like everyone's going to put the best version of themselves on LinkedIn. Like the other 90% of the time, everyone's struggling. So it's okay for you to go through challenges. Just because no one else is talking about it doesn't mean everybody else is not going through it. And it's so important to surround yourself with the right people as well. Having a support network of friends, family, mentors who are there to back you every step of the way is very, very important. In terms of how I basically go through my self-care, it's like I travel. Like that's what I do. It's my passion. It's what I love doing. I've met a lot of people whilst going on trips where they've been like, oh, I lost my job, or they've gone through a traumatic situation in their life and they're traveling for a year. And when they come back, they feel so much better. So the biggest advice I can give in terms of self-care is do what you enjoy. And it could be as simple as like a sport or like going for a walk, like literally anything. Just make sure that you're focusing on your own happiness. Because one thing I've definitely learned is no one's going to care as much about your happiness as much as you care about yourself. So it's really important to focus on you and focus on your own happiness. And just to add to what's been said already about time management, I think it's really, really important to take breaks. And I know it sounds like, taking breaks is like, oh, if I take breaks, surely I'm just like prolonging the workload. But taking breaks makes you feel so much more energized. You're ready to go. Whenever I work for like a couple of hours, take half an hour break, and then I keep going. And I just feel like I'm working faster and more productive just because I've given myself that time to like refresh. Another piece of advice that I would give is to work according to priority. So sort out everything, what's urgent, what's not urgent, what's important, what's not important, and then work according to that so that you're making sure that you're doing the urgent, important tasks first, and then everything else can come after. And also, just because you're spending time on something doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing it well. So focus on how you can add the most value in the shortest amount of time. And that's what I had to do a lot in my final year as well, because I had all these applications to write at the same time. I had like lab work and I was like preparing for finals. So I just literally just like prioritize what's important, what's not important, what I can leave till later. And that really helped me to like get everything right. Yeah, at the end of the year, I didn't know everything, but I knew enough to like get me through it. And that's all you need. You do not need to be perfect. So that's the biggest advice I can give to you.
Okay, thank you for that, Rebecca. That was some really, really great advice. Next, we have Matthew Berrick, who is a future trainee at St Masons. So, pass it to you, Matthew.
Hi, everyone. I just thought I'd talk about an experience I've had, handling stress, and then kind of tie that back into the applications and stuff like that. So I've worked in kind of a variety of different organizations and commercial legal outfits based in the UK and the US since I was 15. But I'm also a non-law graduate who studied international relations and now moving on to the GDL. So I've faced a number of somewhat stressful situations, balancing commitments. One experience I wanted to speak with you about today was when I was working in Washington, DC, in the United States Congress, and across the White House, while studying at a university over there. And that summer I'd secured like 3 roles overseas. I was enrolled as well like at a university there as part of my work visa during that time. So I was kind of working early hours of the morning till late hours of the night, and also studying at university there. So initially I was meant to be in Congress for 2 months, and then I was going to move on to a law firm for the final internship. However, my role was cut short in Congress during July 4th celebrations, and I was faced with finding a new role, and I was given 2 days to do so because I wasn't allowed to be in the country without an internship. So, I didn't want to give up, and I kind of reached out to various networks, and that kind of led me to secure another internship to bridge the gap before heading to San Francisco to work for a firm. So one suggestion I'd have is kind of, stay resilient and don't give up, which is obviously easier said than done sometimes, but, it's better to try and fail than, not to try at all. And, how I felt applying in my final year was very anxious and stuff, because I would attend all these open days and I sort of felt like I had to attend absolutely everything, or I'd miss out, or I'd fall behind other people. And, it's not necessarily about going to everything and knowing everything about every firm. It's impossible to obviously do that. From my experience from trying, you'll burn out. So, then you're no use to anybody. So with the application cycles, I think it's really important to prioritize your time, research firms before you attend any events so that you know which ones you have a real interest in and what aligns best with what you're looking for, or you'll end up investing time in too much other events and things that are going on that aren't really relevant to you. So I think as well now, all of these events being virtual might seem easier because they're remote, but they're actually a lot more pressure on people that are trying to apply, because the accessibility of it means that you think you can go to everything. But now's a more important time than ever, I suppose, to be a bit selective with the firms that you choose to go to and the firms that interest you, because in the end, firms are selective as well. So building up a rapport with a firm and spending time attending events that are important to you are going to be really important in this next cycle, I think. That's obviously just my opinion. I think that insight days are a great way to learn more about the firm, and you should definitely apply for those as well. Vacation schemes are a foot in the door to get the job, but insight days are an opportunity to learn about the firm. If I think about the insight days that I went to, they were definitely very helpful to learn more about where I think I'd like to end up. And I obviously thought that I'd be better off spending time, investing time, developing my rapport with a specific firm, and any of my other time was sort of spent developing new skills or taking a new educational course to develop my knowledge to an area that the firm specialises in. So I took a course earlier in the year at Oxford University in artificial intelligence for cybersecurity, because that was something that I was interested in learning more about. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is I think you need to be really strategic with your approach, and dedicate the right amount of time to the right areas that will make you the best candidate. That doesn't mean going to every single event possible, like I tried to do. Instead, try and research the firms to find the one that interests you the most, to ensure that you're investing 100% effectively without burning out.
Thank you for that, Matthew. That was really insightful from a perspective of a future trainee. We're now going to hear from Suzanne Reece. So Suzanne would like to come forward.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for spending some time with us. My name is Suzanne Reece, and I'm a solicitor, but I don't practice any longer, a lecturer and a study coach. And I really want to come to this discussion from the position of somebody who worked as a lecturer and as a personal tutor. And during my time working, coaching students who were clearly on a very stressful course, there are some insights that I want really just to share with you. First of all, we all go off to study and we hope that the best will happen. But sometimes terrible things happen in our family, to our friends, to us personally. And the reaction of some people is that they really just want to focus on trying to ignore whatever it is that's happened. They want to appear as if everything is normal, and they don't really want to tell their tutors what happened or actually deal with it. So my one piece of advice is that you need to acknowledge when really terrible things happen, either to you personally or to people you know and care about. And you have to acknowledge that that's had an effect on you and that will affect your ability to do your academic work. And the second piece of advice is, having acknowledged that, you then need to go and get some help. So choose either to speak to a friend or a tutor that you get on with. Most universities will have personal tutors, especially when you're doing the vocational courses. So go to your personal tutor or any tutor and talk to them privately and confidentially. Once you do that, it should help you to access resources to help you with whatever's happened, and it will enable you to cope with what's happened and to continue with your studies. And one of the things that I found most disheartening was students who tried very, very hard to cope with something very difficult, didn't manage it, got to the end of their course, clearly their exams were affected, and then only at the stage where they got their exam results did they finally reveal that something quite traumatic had happened to them. So my plea is, if you're studying and something happens that is distressing to you or any family member or friends, please talk to someone in a professional capacity, and start to use the resources that all universities have to support students. And I think it's particularly important in our COVID times where there is a lot of remote learning and you can hide away because you're not going into a physical location and seeing tutors, to think that, you know, I don't have to deal with this, I don't have to talk about it, I don't want it to adversely affect my grade. And I suppose I would echo what Rebecca said. The only person who's going to look after your well-being is you, really, at the end of the day. So please, if you're adversely affected by something, acknowledge it, get support from your university and access resources that they've got to help you. And you'll find that it may mean that you've got to have an extension or maybe revisit some part of your study, but at least you'll be able to deal with whatever the issue is that's affected you and move forward from the incident or the event and improve your studies still. And so that's my main focus. Secondly, I would say at the end of the day, you want to do the best that you can. And quite often when you're having a mental health issue, a bereavement issue, anything, you will not be performing at your best. And it takes a lot to admit that you can't perform at your best for a certain period and to get the help that you need. So don't think that it's going to go against you. Don't be afraid of saying, I need help. And, you know, brave people actually say, I can't do this, I actually need some help. And there's so much help out there to get you through these difficult times. So that's what I've got to say.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was really, really great from a university perspective as well, because it's nice to get that support from your personal tutors, from my experience. We are now going to hear from Angela Hahn, so if she would like to come up to the camera.
Hi. Hi, my name is Angela, and thanks so much for having me here. I am actually based in the U.S. I am in the East Coast in the state of Maryland, a few states below New York. I think instead of like offering any kind of best practices, because I don't necessarily have best practices, I can talk about the experiences that I've had. The two times in my life where I've been the most productive, and both of those times are the times when I had the least amount of time. The first time was when I was graduating from law school, and I did not have a job, and so I'm from South Korea, and so during the summer when I was supposed to be studying for the bar, I went to Korea for an internship, hoping to secure a position. It didn't turn out to be a full-time, like a long-term position, but it was an internship, and so it was an internship at a large law firm, and so I needed to make sure that I was there and present and taking it seriously. And so it was kind of like a 9 to 5, 9 to 7, 9 to 8 sometimes in terms of the schedule, but I also had to study for the bar. And so I don't know if it's in the UK it might be different. I don't know what you guys call the exam, but in the States we call it the bar exam, where we have to take it and then we pass the bar in order to be able to practice law. And so during the whole summer where I was supposed to be studying for the bar, number one, I didn't have a home because the lease in our apartment was up, and so I was traveling in between my in-laws here in the States and my family's home in Korea, and so I was kind of like a nomad at the time, and so I didn't really have my own space either. And but because I'm a health coach, not because I'm a health coach, even before I was a health coach, my whole story is that I overcame my mental health challenges through exercise. And so that is the one thing that's not negotiable for me. And so I made sure that I found at least even 15 minutes in the morning in order to feel that energy for the rest of the day. And kind of went into the office early, an hour early, so that I can study for the bar. And there were times when I went to the bathroom to study for the bar, just with like flashcards, just here and there. whenever there was downtime, because I like that was like for me kind of a break for me, and it kind of sounds insane. It's like, how can you take a break by studying? But for me, it was like break for me doesn't mean taking like getting rest or being relaxed. It's about working towards a specific goal. And so something that has worked for me is being clear about exactly what you want to achieve, and balancing, number one, being able to pursue this internship seriously and being able to commit to it during the hours that I am there. While at the same time, if I do need to take a break from that in order to be more effective at the internship, what can I do during the kind of like little bits of time that I have in between? And that goal for me was to be able to pass the bar. And so I came back to the States to take the bar for about 2 weeks. The bar itself was 2 days, but I came here for, jet lag and everything. And I was so focused on taking the exam that I didn't even bring like comfortable clothes, and so I was wearing flip-flops the whole time. And and then when I was leaving the exam room both days, I was so certain that I had failed, because it was very difficult. And then I realized that I had passed a few months later. I mean, those months were probably one of the most difficult months, just anticipating the results. But looking back, I think that it was most helpful for me to know exactly what my goals are. One was to make sure that I did well in the internship. And number two is to spend enough time as I possibly can for the bar exam. And number three, in order, making sure that I choose that one thing that gives me strength and energy. So that was the one time where I had the least amount of time and was able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. The other time when I was able to accomplish, oh, someone's leaving. Okay. And so the other time that I was able to accomplish what I was able to accomplish was recently, in the past 6 months, building my own business on the side, in addition to being an attorney full time, after giving birth to a child. So my child is now almost 6 months old. And during that time, I had the least amount of time. I don't know if there are any parents out here, and like when the child is born, this was like shockers for me. They said that I have to wake up every 3 hours. And so I know they told me, but I forgot about it. I totally zoned out of it. And so that means like you maybe get like 30, 40 minutes of sleep in between the feedings for the child. And so I pretty much had negative time. And so what I did, because I couldn't use calendars, I couldn't do anything, my entire calendar was out of my control, and I still needed to take care of the newborn. And then 3 months into it, I had to return back to work. I really had to, again, prioritize exactly what I wanted to do. And one was to make sure that I was taking care of the baby. And number two was to build my side hustle. Because of the pandemic, I was so uncertain about what was going to happen. What if I get laid off? What if things happen? And so I wanted to make sure I was doing everything I could to build my side hustle as a health coach. And those were the two goals that I had while like in the middle of the pandemic. And then of course, when I returned to work, the third priority was to make sure that I was doing my job as an attorney as well. And so when I have those three goals super clear, I know that whenever I have time, my energy and time is focused on that, because never been accomplished so far has been done with the 24 hours that we have in each day. And so I know that time is never the issue. It's about the management of energy that we have. And so if we decide, oh, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to sit on a very like a flaming fire, then it's the 5 minutes is going to be the longest time, and it's going to drain our energy, right? But if we spend the next 5 minutes doing something we truly enjoy, then the 5 minutes is going to go by really quickly. And so it's about managing exactly what it is that you want to spend time on and being able to commit to it. And that's my piece.
Thank you, Angela. That was really great to get a transatlantic perspective. And our final speaker is Eloise Skinner. So if she would like to come into the call, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eloise, and I am a corporate associate. And yeah, I guess I'm also really passionate about well-being and kind of personal development. They're my two other goals outside of my day-to-day job. So in terms of like well-being, I teach yoga, Pilates, fitness classes, and I'm also quite into like meditation and that kind of thing as well. And in terms of personal development, I do a lot of like writing and speaking and presenting. And I had a book out last year, which was published by the Law Society, called The Junior Lawyer's Handbook. So if any of you guys are junior lawyers who are thinking about maybe like getting something to prepare you for the corporate world, I have to recommend. But in that book, it talks about sort of like mental health and well-being strategies as well, because I think when we talk about like personal and professional development, there's often this whole piece of like mental health and well-being that's sometimes overlooked. And I think what normally happens is everyone wants to really focus on, as some of the previous speakers have said as well, there's this real push towards like productivity and really achieving a lot and doing a lot and having a lot like going on at one time. And I think in some ways that is helpful, and in some ways it's unhelpful, because actually having too much on can make you overwhelmed, it can make you stressed, and it can ultimately make you less productive than you would have been if you just had a few clear priorities. So really briefly, I think probably my advice to you guys, if you're junior lawyers or thinking about going into the profession, is right now, as students or as kind of junior lawyers, wherever you are at the moment, just thinking about what are the fundamental elements that you need to sustain well-being, like in your day-to-day life. So like mind, it might be like meditation or like something for your body, maybe like exercise or a fitness routine, or even just like eating well, sleeping well, really basic things. But like figure out what those kind of priorities are for you right now, and then you'll be able to take those with you throughout your career. So it's really about like knowing yourself, or getting to know yourself like right now, what you need, what your kind of well-being foundations are, and then being able to take those with you throughout your new career as a junior lawyer, and just setting up boundaries around those. So I guess that's my biggest piece of advice.
Thank you to Eloise, and thank you to all of our speakers. That was really fantastic insights, advice, stories that we all find relatable during this pandemic season and application season and just general studies. So we will now be moving on to the question and answer portion of the evening. So my first question for you is, for all the speakers, is how do you shut down after a long day at the office or after studying? How do you shake the day off?
I'd be happy to provide. For me, what works for me is kind of exercise. I find it a really good outlet for me to kind of just get my mind off things and kind of put it in another space, put it in a box, and kind of spend time doing something else that I'm passionate about, and kind of clear my mind a bit. So that's what works for me. But
I literally just watch so many YouTube videos just to chill, do something completely different to whatever I'm studying or reading, because it helps to like get my mind off it. And what I've recently started doing a lot of is walking. Like I pretty much walk every single day now in the evening, and that really helps me like clear my mind, ready for the next day.
Hi, it's Suzanne here. I found a really useful app called Insight Timer, and it's a free app. It has a paid version, but there's a free version, and you can do meditations on the app. So there's music, there's meditations, there's talking, and I find that before I go to sleep, I do maybe 15-20 minutes of one of my favorite meditations to help sleep. And if I wake up in the middle of the night or in the early hours of the morning, I get my phone out, I put the app on, and I do a meditation, and it helps me go back to sleep. So I found that a really, really useful tool.
Anyone else? Okay, I will. What study techniques would you recommend implementing as a university student or a law student?
I'll take this one. I'm not actually a law student, but I know a lot about studying. Okay, so I think study techniques wise, again, find out what works for you, because it might take a little bit of trial and error to actually work out what is the best way of doing things. So, but when it comes to sort of remembering very specific information, I find Quizlet so useful. I obviously do languages, but it can literally be used for anything. I used it for history as well, because it's basically just online flashcards, and these flashcards allow you to so you can learn them, you can write them, you can spell them, like you can do whatever. It's just ever, and you can organize them into categories. It's basically just like the best online platform for flashcards. Could be used for things like case law. Really helpful. Things like remembering dates and things as well is so useful. So anything like that, I would really recommend to any sort of student, actually, not just law students as well. That's what I would say.
I also recommend working with your peers as well. Because for a couple of my exams, it was like very analytical, and it was very useful having discussions with other people in my study group, because you need different ideas. It makes you think in different ways. So I definitely recommend collaborating with other people in your group.
For me, my suggestion is that however you like to study, whether it's individually or in a group, whatever techniques you use, make sure that task. I don't believe that you can multitask when you're learning. So, you can have your phone on, you can be watching YouTube, but you're not actually studying. So you need to clear away the clutter and focus specifically on what you're studying, either individually or in your group, and you'll be far more effective.
I'm great as well. So I found that listening to music without words is really useful, because sometimes it's a bit quiet when you're studying with nothing in the background. So perhaps classical music, and also working in 45-minute sections. One of my mentors actually suggested this technique, and it actually changed my life. So working for 45 minutes, taking a break for 15 minutes, and then going back and repeating that cycle, that's really effective. So you're not overloading yourself.
Okay, I have a question. What do you think our industry, like the corporate legal industry, could be doing better to help mental well-being?
Well, one thing good thing that was going on was the Mindful Business Charter, which has been around for a while now, and that kind of stimulates greater awareness surrounding mental health and work-life balance. So there's a number of firms that sort of signed up to that. It was co-founded by Pinsent Masons and Adelshire Goddard, as well as a host of other firms that are kind of committing towards people's mental health well-being. So yeah, I think that's a really great initiative and a really good step in the right direction. But obviously, there's still a lot that needs to be done to enhance that awareness.
I think for me, the biggest impact that companies and just like my employer has had on me is just listening to what I need. I think that there are great initiatives out there for mental health and meditation and just health generally. But it's, I think, one thing to really listen to what the employees need. And it has been the most transformative for me when my employer and my team and my boss are listening to what I need, because everybody's needs are different. People may want flexible schedules. People may want more salaries. People may want resources like a free subscription to the Calm app. And so we all have different needs. And the fact that the company or the firm is able to have the flexibility in meeting people's different needs, I think it would be critical moving forward.
Great. The name of the quiz thing was Quizlet. That's the application you use for the flashcards. And we have a question here.
How can someone develop reading skills when they struggle to focus? I don't know if any particular person wants to take that. How can someone develop reading skills when they struggle to focus?
I'm not sure how my input would be, but perhaps a way of doing this is when you're reading something to kind of focus your attention, make a bullet point of 5 things that you've taken away from the piece, like the page or something that you've just read, and then take away 5 things that you didn't understand in the piece that you've just read, and that way you can actually check that you're actually taking in the information and thinking about what you're reading.
I think also highlighting really helps. It helped me when I was like preparing for finals, especially when I use like different colors for different bits of information. Like I remember when I'm seeing the exam, I remember the color and match it with the information. That helps me like remember the information. So yeah.
I don't know if I can input. I think choosing a time of day as well. When I was doing a law degree, I think there's certain times of the day where you're more functional. Sometimes people are more functional in the morning. So if you know you're more functional in the morning, then do all your work in the morning and don't leave it till nighttime when you're yawning and tired and distracted.
I also struggled with this a lot. By the way, I'm Angela. I'm like trying to understand who everybody is here. So my name is Angela, and when I struggle with this in law school and also in college is not like I think these are all really good suggestions. In addition to that, I struggled with purpose. Like, why am I even reading this? I think that's the reason for me that I didn't have focus at all. So I think kind of tuning into why it is that you're here and thinking about what goals that this pursuit of going to law school or going to college is doing for your future, and being completely aligned with that, and just excavating the kind of like the facts and like the truth in your mind first, as much as you can on a daily basis. That would be most helpful. I have a journal where I write the same 3 goals every single day, and I know that everything that I do in the day is geared towards that. And so when that purpose is clear, then everything that I do, I'm able to focus much better.
Okay, we have another question here. How can one have a productive downtime, if that's possible?
I wouldn't do anything if it's downtime. Like, it's time to chill. So yeah, I recommend just taking a break. And taking a break helps you as well. When you are working, you're more productive because you feel more energized. So yeah, don't always feel like you have to work. It's okay to take breaks.
I think it's really important to remember that we're human beings, not robots, and there's this idea that you can constantly be taking in something. It's okay to do something boring and monotonous. I found on one occasion I went out on a trip. We went to a monastery. We were doing some routine task of putting leaflets into envelopes. And that was the most relaxing, chilled out thing I'd done in a long time. So the most boring and mundane things where you're not actively engaging your brain and having to think can be very, very relaxing, and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I actually think on a similar note, sort of not necessarily downtime, but actually just doing something productive that's not work is actually so useful. I always do this. So, for example, if I decide that my brain just isn't working, I can't do any work, and I have time, I will just go and clean the kitchen, do something like that. I think in that sense, it does feel more productive. But also it is important to know that you don't have to justify your downtime to anybody. You don't have to justify what you're doing. You don't have to justify it to yourself even. If you need downtime, have downtime. You don't need to label it as productive or not, or unproductive. The fact that you are taking a break is productive, and that's enough. And that's how I feel. It's a big step for your mental health, realizing that breaks are important. What you're doing is enough. What you're doing is necessary, and it's just very, very important to have that mindset, particularly when you're at university. So that is what I would say.
Great. So I have a question here. So could you give us some advice on how to deal with rejections as they are an unavoidable part of the application process and have a strong effect on mental health?
I think the biggest advice that I can give with rejections is really just surrounding yourself with the right people. Because I spoke to a couple of people and they were like, well, I got accepted, da, 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 da. And like, it's fine, like surrounding yourself with people that have made it, but there's a way you can talk to people that would not make them feel bad for not being in the same position. And then went on to talk to another group of friends and they were like so supportive. So it's really important that you're making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who actually back you regardless of whatever you're going through. And this can be friends, it can be family, it can also be mentors as well. Like I was quite lucky that I had quite a few people that like supported me with the applications, and I just like messaged them, and literally 1 hour call I was fine. And I went on to do like a couple of interviews after that and got vaccine. So it's really important that you have the right people around you.
I'd also say that like one of my mentors, David Meltzer, who is an entrepreneur, he says something where if you know that it takes 25 no's to get to a yes, every single no should be exciting. And so that's kind of been the case for me. I've been rejected hundreds of times, not only as a law student and as a lawyer, but also as an entrepreneur, because you have to get through the no's in order to get to the yeses. But I've found that the no's are, I mean, we always hear that failure is part of the process, but the no's were so essential in getting to the best yeses so that I work with the people that I love working for. And so if you frame it that way and know that every no is getting you to exactly where you need to be, then I feel like every no is an exciting thing.
Just leading on from no's can be very demoralizing, but I think it is very, very important to surround yourself around people who like surround yourself with like a collegiate atmosphere, people who are going to encourage you, because I think when your confidence is boosted, you feel like you can do anything, and that's kind of reflected, that confidence was reflected in future applications. So just really surround yourself with people who push you and not people who will like who are just also just saying, no, I've been accepted for this, and not being very tactful towards your situation.
And finally, can I just say that you have to give yourself time. A no is always going to be a disappointment, and you have to acknowledge that disappointment, sit with it for a while, and then you just bounce back up. But you have to acknowledge that when you get a no, you're going to feel upset about it. It's not going to be positive for a short time. But as everyone else has said, surround yourself with wonderful people, and always remember that no is part of the journey to getting towards a yes.
If I might just add very quickly, I think also in terms of kind of Angel's advice is very kind of useful in terms of being excited about kind of a no, and then it might lead to a yes. But I think it's also kind of, from what I've experienced, important to not just kind of sit and try and forget about a no and hope for your next kind of acceptance onto an internship. It's important to kind of take that no and have the willingness to kind of go through it, sit down and understand why it was a no, because that's the only way you're going to be able to kind of improve and eventually kind of get that yes. I think it does take a lot of courage to kind of sit through and kind of think about the time where you got that awful rejection letter and kind of trying to improve yourself. So yeah.
With the pandemic and everybody working from home, this kind of results in a combination of your personal space and your workspace. So what do you think are ways in which you can deal with that as a professional or as a student?
Having like a schedule, so I've a point that Laura made, which is actually an app that I use as well. So having Google Calendar, so things are very structured, and structuring, implementing breaks into your schedule as well, and then forcing yourself to take those breaks.
For me, I think I work from home, so it's important to have different zones for doing different things. I never ever work in my bedroom. But there are different parts of the house that I can move to, different parts of the garden, depending on what the task is. So try to move around the space you have, not just your home, but there are certain tasks that maybe you could do in the park while the weather's good, or certain tasks that you could do in a cafe. So try to move your space around, not always be stuck in the same space, would be my advice.
I think what I want to add to that is to speak to the people that you're living with, so your family, your friends, whoever. Because when I was doing when I had GDO exams in June, a couple of friends that I had the exams with were struggling to focus whilst at home because of a lot of distractions. And one thing you find is that your family is very understanding. That because I spoke to one of them, I was like, "Have you told your mum that you'd like these few hours to work?" And she was like, "No." So just like speak to people around you because they're there to support you as well.
Yeah, I think following on from both of those answers, definitely for students in particular, if there is the possibility that you can move around campus to do work, do it. Because again, there are distractions in student houses, particularly considered with the pandemic at the moment. A lot of universities are indefinitely online, which is a pain, but most campus facilities should be open. So if you are by no means just isolated in your bedroom, you do not need to be just confined to your room. Yeah, definitely move around. I agree profusely with that. Definitely, I'll be doing that.
I have a question. So, in terms of self-care, what's one activity that you do to help you distance yourself from your work that's a mode of self-care for you?
I have a favorite YouTuber. Her name's Nilla Rose. So when I just want to do something completely unproductive, I'll just binge watch all her old videos, and no matter what kind of stress situation I'm in, she'll always make me laugh in every situation. So I think YouTube's great and just streaming things pointlessly.
I think I mentioned this already, but I take walks a lot now. I used to take a lot of walks before, but now I do that even more. I think because of COVID, I walk for like an hour around like my block aimlessly, and when I come back, it just helps me feel refreshed. And it's quite interesting actually, because especially like days where I feel really stressed, I go for the walk, I come back, and it's like I feel like a different person. So I definitely recommend taking walks.
So I'm also a walk person. So COVID times, my sister and I have been getting up at 6 o'clock and going for a very early morning walk. And I'm not even a morning person, but it's a great time to be out there. You don't meet too many people. The birds are still singing. So, just try to go for a walk at a time that's convenient for you, but actually just go out and enjoy nature a little bit. That's what I'd say.
Okay, so with regards to social media, obviously it has its benefits and it has its disadvantages, but how would you recommend browsing social media in a way that's sustainable and good for your mental health?
I think that the advice with that is literally just follow the people that make you happy. Don't follow people that make you feel bad about yourself or the situation that you're currently in. Especially Instagram, you could mute people, you can mute their posts, you can mute their story, and it's not necessarily because you don't like them. It's just you don't need that information right now. And so if you're applying for training contracts and there's this one person on Instagram that's always posting about the 5 vac schemes that they've already got, mute them. If that makes you feel like you're under pressure, then you don't need that.
I would just say that I just don't use Twitter because I think it's a very toxic social media, but I use, Instagram, LinkedIn. People are always pleasant on those sites, I find. But yeah, I just don't use Twitter.
I would say also with regards to LinkedIn and specifically LinkedIn, a lot of people these days, it's been quite a pleasant surprise actually. People have actually been posting about their rejections recently on Instagram, on LinkedIn. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it's become more of a good trend in a way that people are realizing that actually LinkedIn is not just a post about perfect applications and perfect candidates. It's actually to recognize that we are all human, and it builds resilience in a different way that it would have done a few months ago. I think this summer and the pandemic has really humbled a lot of people. And I think just in that sense, you will get a lot of support if you do post that sort of nature of a message on LinkedIn. And there are a lot of high profile sort of LinkedIn legends on there that do post about this as well. So I think just continuing to follow those people will be really, really beneficial in this next application season.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, LinkedIn's become a lot more of a collegiate atmosphere since people have been posting their rejections, and it just makes things really transparent, and it shows that we're all not perfect, and as Laura said, we're all human. So yeah.
I was going to ask, with the political climate and Black Lives Matter and all of these events going on in the world, what do you think we can do to help each other get through this period with regards to mental well-being?
I think the biggest impact that I have gotten and that I was able to take advantage of is when I was giving the most and being able to serve other people. And I know that sounds very vague, but kind of understanding, like learning how to listen to what people are saying when people are sending you a message or when they're trying to connect with you, kind of understanding, kind of reading in between the lines. If they say something like, I'm enjoying your podcast, or I'm enjoying your posts, then continuing that conversation and trying to ask the right questions so that you can kind of hear more about what it is that they want, be able to connect with them, the people that might be helpful to them, and being able to get the answers by having that conversation. And if someone gets to get on a call with you, just having that conversation and to serve as much as you can, because the times when I have served the most without expecting anything in return are the times when I have been able to get the most out of it for myself.
Just to follow on from that, I would say that, so as white people particularly, it is very, very important not to ask people of colour for educational sort of insights. I think that's become very, very, very important. I've seen a lot of people on my Facebook do this and like comment and ask her, how do I approach this, or what would you tell me to do? And I think the most important thing with that is to not do it, because people who are put in a position of disadvantage in whatever way or discrimination have got enough to deal with. They don't need people asking for advice, asking for, how can I help you? If you do your research independently, you're going to get somewhere and you're going to learn stuff. You don't need to bombard other people for help and education. That's your job, but that's something that a lot of people have been doing a lot of, and I've been pleased to see that, because people have been very, very ignorant, and it just needs to sort of level out a little bit more. People need to be willing to put in the work rather than just asking people who might have more of an insight. By reading books and again doing the podcast, listening to the podcasts, and gaining and using their own initiative to actually learn more about it, rather than just bombarding already fed up people with just being annoying, really. So I think that's what I would say in this climate. Be independent with it if you're in a position of privilege. privilege because you're already in that position, and the least you can do is, at least we can do, is educate ourselves. So that's what I would say.
Thank you for that. I can relate to this question a lot. How do you have a job or an education and try to have it effectively without focusing on one thing too much, without the scales? Got any advice for that?
Suzanne here. I think there are times in your life when you have to work hard and you have to focus on your work, and what you need to be very conscious of, and I think we all start out at the very early part of our career wanting to do well at work and spending a lot of time at work and working long hours, is that it doesn't become a pattern where there's just work and there's nothing else. You don't have time for friends, you don't have time for family, you don't have time to socialize. And it's not an easy balance to do sometimes. It's a constant, moving to one extreme and then pulling back and finding that balance eventually. So it's something that you learn with time, but you have to just watch out that you're not just focusing on one particular area of your life.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Suzanne. You definitely do have to work hard if you want to get somewhere, but starting small and like creating hobbies if you don't have hobbies at the moment, doing things that you like, taking out a day to do things that you like. Like I recently started online shopping again, and I can't tell the last time I did that. And it's the small things, doing the things that you really enjoy that really do take, give yourself a break from the hard work.
I think it also helps with your mindset as well when you're doing something else outside of work, especially if you're potentially someone that, I don't know, I mean, a lot of people love their work, but there's also a lot of people who don't, not that they don't enjoy their work, but it's not something that they're getting full passion from. Then having a side hustle definitely helps you basically channel all that energy because you've got something else to focus on that you really enjoy. And in terms of kind of pushing forward with everything, it's literally just about setting meaningful targets. So don't feel overwhelmed about where you see yourself in 10 years' time. Think more about where do you see yourself by the end of this year or in 2 years' time. It makes it feel more manageable.
Okay, so we're down to our last couple of questions. How do you find your passion if you're still unsure about what you want to do? How do you find something that makes you passionate?
I think if you're passionate, you're probably already doing it anyway, because if it's something that you're passionate about, you would have explored it just naturally, gravitated towards it. And also from speaking to people as well, because sometimes you need to speak to other people and they bring it out of you. So this is where mentors come in. So if you speak to someone who's got a bit more experience and just talk to them about that, bounce off different ideas with them, it would really help because they'll basically bring that passion out of you as well.
Yeah, and I think two things that have helped me find my passion, which is in healthcare and health coaching, is that number one, I was looking for my own passion too, and several years ago I came upon this YouTube video where it said, "Look for your greatest passion and your biggest pain," because I thought that I needed to find my passion in something that I really enjoyed, but I really couldn't find anything. I was just so miserable, feeling like I didn't have a passion, and so when they talked about the biggest pain, I knew that it was my health journey, overcoming my mental health struggles. And so, okay, I knew that that was something that I wanted to do. And then I think when it comes to the exact thing that you want to do in that field, that comes with practice and dipping your feet in whatever it is that comes kind of to your doorstep. And then with practice, whatever comes easiest to you, whatever comes the easiest to you, is something that is difficult for other people. And so that is your zone of genius.
Great. And one last question, if all our speakers could answer, that would be great. If you had one piece of advice that you would give to university yourself, what would it be?
Give to who? Sorry, can you repeat that?
To your 18-year-old self.
18-year-old self, okay.
I think the biggest advice that I would give to my 18-year-old self is to explore as many things as possible and try as many things as possible. Because one thing I found when I was younger with a lot of my friends is that we would always talk about, oh, I want to do this by age 30, I want to do this at age 40. But you go through so much in life that you might end up wanting to do something else. But if you're an open person, you've got more options and you can navigate through to what you want to do, and you change as a person as well. So it's really important to be open, talk to as many people as possible in industries that you may not even think that you're interested in, because you just never know where life takes you.
It's Suzanne here. I would say that when I was 18, I had quite a rose-tinted ideal of the world, and I thought it was, perfect once you went into academia and you studied and you convinced people, and that logic and arguments would prevail. And then over the years I found that people aren't always logical, they don't always engage their intellectual skills, and I would say to my 18-year-old self, keep the spirit and fight for what you believe in, but the sooner you lose your rose-tinted vision of the world, the better, because it makes you a stronger and better person to fight.
That's very true. Well, I feel like this day and age, we can't have a rose-tinted view of the world. I mean, look at it. I mean, I'm only 21, nearly 22, but I'd tell my 18-year-old self that you don't have to have everything figured out. We are still very, very young. Even now, I'm still incredibly young. And even though I have a plan now, you don't need to have that when you're 18. You don't need to know what you want to do 10 years time, like 5 years time. You don't even need to know which job you want to go into, because a lot of jobs actually just require, well, even if you just go to university and do a degree, a lot of jobs just require a degree. It doesn't have to be particular. Even law, for example, I don't do a law degree. I only recently decided I wanted to do law, but that's not going to stand in my way. You can do what you do. And there's never a time where it's too late to figure it out. I know plenty of people that have started training to become a lawyer at age 28 because they've done another career, or it's very, very common. So you don't have to have everything figured out right away. Even if other people around you seem to have it figured out, they definitely don't. I know that from experience. So don't put pressure on yourself.
A piece of advice just 2 years ago, I would say not to overthink everything and just to focus on what you're doing, because everyone's got a whole nother world of their own, and they've got a whole other problems that they're dealing with every day, and they don't really have time to watch you. So just kind of go for it and don't really focus on what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I would I think my biggest issue when I was in first year of university was that I was kind of scared about the amount of opportunities to do kind of different things that were available. And as a result, I kind of closed off from everything because, there's just so many options. So I think a piece of advice that I would have given myself would be to, I suppose, focus on one thing and make sure you actually kind of experience something, understand if it's for you or not, and then move on to the next thing. And instead of just kind of, hiding away from all the opportunities that are open for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, really going off of that, and some of the other folks that have chimed in along those lines, is to take action before it's perfect. I think a lot of the times our dreams are crushed not because of competition or some external factor, but because we refuse to take action and we chalk it up to some other reason or excuse that we feel like that justifies the lack of taking action. And so definitely taking action and learning from it. I mean, the biggest example is our software updates for our phones, right? Phones are not perfect. They have software updates every few weeks, and it's annoying, but it just shows that it's not perfect. It's continuing to improve. So if our phones can improve every few weeks, we absolutely can too.
Thank you all for that, and thank you all for participating in this webinar, in our first webinar. I'd like to thank the speakers individually, so thank you to Matthew, Eloise, Angela, Suzanne, and Rebecca. I'd like to thank Laura and Makar for also speaking. I'd also like to thank the CORPWR team that are behind the scenes working really hard to make sure that this event is successful. And yeah, I'd like to thank you all for watching and coming to this webinar. And I hope that you got really some useful advice and that you are able to use in your university or your careers or just in life in general. And yeah, so we'll see you at our next webinar. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you very much.